All right, joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Professional Content, Galen Moore in Boston. Hello there, Galen. Thanks for joining us. So just taking a look at Bitcoin right now, we are seeing a bit of a rally. I wonder what's behind this boost. Is it just some sideways trading, or are we getting out of the bear market?
Gosh, I don't know, Christine. I'm pleased to see Bitcoin up over 40,000. I kind of think that's where it should be. And I kind of continue to look at the terrifying headlines around the world. What's going on in Europe? Energy crisis in Ukraine, interest rate turmoil in emerging markets. Look, this is a time. This should be a time for gold, right? And yet gold is up 1.5% so far this year. So even that is kind of amazing, right? Considering how it was last year. Woof. So I think when it comes to that asset you hold against a crisis, whether you're a bank or an individual, there's a real sense of a better alternative emerging. And that's like a, $12 trillion opportunity that I think Bitcoin is on a long-term path toward realizing. So I don't know, for me, 40,000, 35,000, I feel like we're on a long-term road somewhere else. I don't know. The gold narrative isn't very interesting, is it? But I still think about it at these times.
Well, one of the interesting narratives I'm hearing and a tailwind for Bitcoin is, BlackRock getting into the game. Their clients include sovereign wealth funds, nations, and this echoes a conversation I had earlier in the week with the founder of Avalanche, Emin Gunnar, who was also talking to sovereign wealth funds. So, we've seen hedge funds coming in, institutional investment throughout 2021. This could be the year that, more nation states, more sovereign wealth funds actually get into the game. And that would be huge.
I think so. I mean, look, honestly, the thing that caught my interest in the BlackRock announcement was that they might offer trading through Aladdin. That would be huge. One of the things that I think holds back professionals is lack of availability via existing workflow. That and the absence of trading on credit, which, it still hasn't really been solved. But look, I think in terms of sovereign funds, I mean, you said it earlier, the El Salvador Bitcoin bond. I mean, like, honestly, look, I've said before what I think about the idea of a Bitcoin city planned by a dictator. In short, I'm skeptical. But I think a Bitcoin-backed bond is a very interesting and compelling move for a country like El Salvador. And I hope we'll see more of it as emerging economies find, this path to kind of chart their own economic destiny.
Okay, let's take a look at some headwinds. Well, we've got the EU mining ban chatter happening, but again, advocates there don't believe, EU mining is really will harm the Bitcoin network in any way. But we do see a pattern of miners offloading some coins, though marginally. I mean, it's still net positive. I also want to take a look at this Bitfinex story. Let's play a clip from the Department of Justice.
The department has charged Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan for their alleged roles in a conspiracy to launder stolen cryptocurrency taken during the 2016 hack of a virtual currency exchange. That hack resulted in the theft of almost 120,000 Bitcoin, which at the time was worth approximately $71 million. Today, the value of that Bitcoin has grown to over $4.5 billion. As part of this investigation, the Department of Justice has seized over $3.6 billion worth of that stolen cryptocurrency. This is the largest seizure of cryptocurrency ever by U.S. law enforcement. It is also the department's largest single financial seizure in its history. The message to criminals is clear. Cryptocurrency is not a safe haven. We can and we will follow the money no matter what form it takes.
Okay, a couple of things to unpack there. First of all, crypto Twitter loves that the DOJ is basically putting an ad out there on how accumulating Bitcoin and holding over time could realize serious gains. But arguably, Bitcoin off markets makes Bitcoin more scarce, and that has contributed to the rise of Bitcoin. So what happens when that Bitcoin is returned back to the market? What kind of impact might that have on price? And even as CoinDesk reported, a week ago, that we had seen these coins moving from the Bitfinex hack, that it could potentially be some downside risk in case those coins end up being offloaded. Well, now we know that it's in the possession of the DOJ. So what happens from here?
I think I think in the past, these events where cryptocurrency has been auctioned by the federals have been pretty well managed and predictable. Certainly there's a possibility that something chaotic could happen. It does seem like that's a volume of Bitcoin that could have a market impact. The liquidity in Bitcoin is sizable, right? Able to absorb a fairly large amount of coin, but that's a lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah,
So,
it's a lot of Bitcoin.
could something happen there possibly? But it's not something I'd necessarily stay up worried about.
I mean, it's listed as a risk whenever something like this happens. When Mt. Gox and the creditors, were announced that they would get their money back, that was listed as a concern that suddenly a wave of Bitcoin would be unloaded onto the market. So it remains to be seen, I think. But it also shows how traceable Bitcoin is, which is could be a double-edged sword. I mean, on the one hand, DOJ loves it. If they really concentrate their resources, they've shown that they can trace Bitcoin from bad actors. But then again, it has a load of privacy concerns for those who do not want their transactions necessarily surveilled by governments.
Bitcoin is cash-like. It's not cash. And I think I've read that some in law enforcement refer to it as prosecution futures, right? And this case certainly puts that on blast, right? You have an event that took place in 2016. 6 years later, somebody tries to dig up the money and move it and knock on the door, right? I think it, look, I don't think necessarily that in cryptocurrency, there's a tendency to kind of cheer when this kind of thing happens and point and say, look, Bitcoin can't be used by criminals. But I think that overlooks some of the things that, for example, the government in Beijing would view the protesters in Hong Kong as criminals. So I think, the sort of cash-like aspects of Bitcoin and of other cryptocurrencies, especially privacy coins, do lend themselves to those kinds of uses. It is digital gold. And, we need to be thinking as we think about how Bitcoin fits into, a more and more kind of institutional adoption in a regulated world. How do those use cases kind of come out and shine in a way that moves things forward?